Hi, I'm Nicolai, and this is Crash Course World History. Today, we're going to talk about food. Specifically, and generally, we're going to talk about food and empire building throughout history. 1.
But Mr. Green, wasn't food just around for people in markets?
I'm not John Green. And secondly, food has always been changing and adapting to their own environments, just like empires have been adapting to their own.
To begin, we're starting with the time after the Paleolithic Age, and we're going into this with the thought bubble. Let's check it out.
The Paleolithic Age began around 2.6 million years ago, with hunting animals and a nomadic lifestyle being the norm. About 2.5 million years ago began the Stone Age, with weapons crafted from sharpened rocks like spears and later on ranged weapons like bows and arrows. Fruits like grapes were common pickings, and some common game were deer and antelopes. This gradually turned into the Neolithic era, which marked the age of agriculture. Nomadic hunter-gatherers began to select certain wild crops like wheat and barley that grew bigger and better harvests. This led to the domestication of crops and later in a permanent settlement which began the age of civilization. Throughout time, new farming techniques began as a result of civilization adapting to their new environments, such as terrace farming in ancient China.
Now it's time for the open letter. Ooh, corn. Dear corn, thank you for being a delicious part of our meal. Without you, 90% of our world's harvest would be gone. Best wishes, Marco.
Now with the introduction of corn, we're now going to jump into the discovery of the Americas. The colonization of civilizations like the Aztecs and Native Americans gave Europeans access to new crops like potatoes and corn, which even today has led to a massive increase in population across Eurasia. These crops brought down from the Americas were primarily used with other European crops in the three-field system, where crops would be cycled between winter crops, summer crops, and a resting soil for that plot of land to regain its nutrition in the soil for the next year. As a result of the discovery of the Americas, an epidemic swept across the Native American population. With the introduction of the foreign diseases like smallpox and the flu, millions of Native Americans were killed. This resulted in the Atlantic slave trade, in which millions of African slaves were brought over in exchange for other goods provided by Europe and America. Disease did not escape Europe, though, as back in the 1350s a bubonic plague was brought over and swept across the unhygienic Europe at the time. The Black Death began to spread during the Mongol period, where in 1350 it spread through diseased rats and boats. The disease spread and killed millions, which led to the lack of work labor. In turn, this created a famine across Europe, and a total of a third of all people in Europe at the time died. The interesting thing about GMOs, most of all, is the controversy behind them. On one hand, many people rightly argue that without GMOs today, our world population would not be as high as it is. On the other hand, many argue that GMOs are not only poisonous towards our health, but that it also damages the environment. One example of this being the history of the seed patent system. In the 1930s, the patenting of seeds became available, and large organizations began to have scientists create the strongest seeds possible to patent them. This led to the mass farming of invasive plants that would spread to local farmers' land and would allow the owner to get sued on account of stealing. Although GMOs are still up for debate, one thing is for certain: none of us can live without food, and in turn, plants and food we know of today would not exist as it is, whether it was for better or for worse. Thanks for watching.